Last thing I want to show here as an intro to Eclipse is doing debugging in Eclipse. Now I have these methods lying around, and inside of each of these methods I can go through and create different variables or whatever I want to do there. So I'm going to write a little bit of code here. And I'm just doing some random stuff inside of here. And so what I'm doing is I'm looping through these methods. And so what I want to do, the last thing here, is to call this from here. And so my main calls second, which calls method. Okay, now I forgot one thing inside of here. Main is a static. Second and method are not statics inside of here. This is something you might run across as you're doing some code. It's a nice little reminder right here. But what we have to remember is that static means I don't have an object. These guys are class methods, which means I have to have an object to do it. So class method is saying I have to have somebody I need to ask about this. The quick and easy fix around this is to make these static. I don't really want to do that. What I'm going to do instead is say new test.second. And that's going to solve my problem. I'm going to create an object and then go ask that object to do this work for me. And then I can see what's going on here. Now, what I want to show you is the debugger. We're not going to get into all the aspects of how to debug, just more of how the tool works. So for the debugger, let's first start by just running this code normal. I hit run, and it goes off and runs. You can see it says hello, it says 13, and it says blah foo. Okay? And we'll see how this code runs here in a second by working through the debugger. The debugger is a tool that allows you to run through one line of a code at a time, or to jump through code, and more importantly, to be able to inspect the state of code as you do the work. So to activate the debugger, first of all, you need to know about the debug button. So if I hit the debug button up here, it does the exact same thing as the run did, because the debugger just runs the code, except for it will stop when you tell it to. How do you tell it to? Well, in my code, I'm going to go to the very first line of code over here. I'm going to go over to the left-hand side. I'm going to double-click, and you can see this little circle up here. Now, when I hit the debug to run, it'll ask me, do I want to switch over to the debug perspective? Because this is actually the big breakpoint it hit at this point. And so I can choose to say yes or no on that. I can say, remember my decision, it'll do it automatically for it, or not. And so I hit yes, and it brings me over to the debug perspective that we opened up before. And so now you can see over here in the top left, it tells me what line of code I'm on. I'm on line 7 of the main. And over here is all the variables I have, the arguments, and I have no arguments coming in. And so up here is a bunch of buttons where I can step into, which goes into a method and walks through the details inside of it, or I can step over a method. And you can see that there's F5 and F6 shortcuts for these as well. There's also an option for F7, which runs until the current method returns, and F8, which just runs until you hit the next breakpoint. So I'm going to hit F6 to step over this, because I don't care about the details of how something prints. I just care that it prints. And so I stepped over that line of code, and you can see hello printed out down below. I'm going to hit the step over button again a couple times, and you can see now I have variable I that showed up here, and I has been assigned to be 7. And then if I step over it one more time, I now have J, and J is assigned to be I plus 6, which is 13. And so I can print out J. Step over that, and then J gets printed out. Now, here I can step into the method, which is stepping into the constructor for the class here. And so I can step over that, and then I can do step into again, which steps into second. All right, and so now you can see it's transitioned from main line 15 into second, which is in line 27. I can step over this line here, and you can see I now have the variable blah that shows up here. And the variable blah is a string with a bunch of details inside of it, and it contains that text inside of there. I can do step into again, and it's going to take me into the next method. So you can see it went from main to second to method. and stepping through each one of these. Step over this again. There's my foo variable. Step over that. I print out blah and foo. And then I start jumping back up. Now I'm at the last line. I ended method. I'm at the last line of second. I step over that. I come into the last line of main. And then my program is about to exit. I can hit F8 here, or the run button up there, and it'll finish the program. It's done executing. The program's terminated. So that's how I can use the debugger. One other little quick tip I'll show you. I can run the debugger. I can step over something, and I can realize, hey, you know what? I don't want I to be 7. I want I to be 17. I can double-click this, change the value, hit Enter, and it changes that value in real time. It doesn't change the code, but it gives you the chance to correct something. If you want to try something out, if you want to see if you can break something, if you want to just try different ways of manipulating data, you can do so by hand by jumping inside like this. And then, again, I can resume this and using the button over here, which is the F8 key or the resume button, and it'll run through the rest of that. So it's a quick intro to the debugger. Might not need it right away, but you probably will need it eventually. So play with this, practice this, and have some fun with it.